Hello everyone. So coming with the solutions for the LRDI section of CAT 2023 slot 3. So there were 4 sets, each set containing 5 questions. So there were a total of 20 questions. Sets range from a difficulty level of medium to moderate difficult. The first set basically was talking about certain dealers that were dealing in certain air conditioners. Was not very tough. If you look down to evaluate the information given, they said there was a company that was selling air conditioners to 4 of the dealers, dealer 1, dealer 2, dealer 3, and dealer 4 in a city. The set wanted us to evaluate the number of ACs sold to each of the dealers that were available in 2 variants, that is windows and split ACs. And both the variants were either in the format of inverter type or non-inverter type ACs. More or less, if you look down to the data, the fundamentals were to calculate the total number of ACs of each type, where we could divide the type of ACs into 4 parts. So to figure out the information when we get down to the data, what we wanted really to analyze is certain number of window ACs that were into 2 types, that is inverter and non-inverter ACs. And then there were certain split ACs again to be divided into inverter and non-inverter ACs. And the total of each of them. Fine. Definitely thoda bahut jugaad lag sakta tha. We could have gone through the information in the question given, could have used the data from there. But in the first go, the data doesn't seem very obvious because the fundamental was there was 2 questions that was non-MCQs in the theta format. One of the question was talking about necessarily true or false. One of the question was talking about percentage of AC sold to non-inverter type. But again, बहुत ज़्यादा information practical नहीं थी in terms of questions asked. So the fundamental important was let's try to create the information given in terms of filling up the data. To start with, the first and the most important information was, it is known that the total number of ACs sold in the city, 25% was window variant, while the rest was split variant. So what was that means? Out of the total, if 25% was window and the 75% was split, so I could have divided windows and split in the ratio of 1:3. So total of window ACs, let's be X. So total of split ACs would become 3X if the total AC sold was 4X. Then among the inverter ACs, 20% was window variant. So among the inverter, if 1/5, 20% was window variant. So what we can say is अगर total inverter 5 आए हैं, तो उसमें से Y was window and 4Y has to be split. So that was the first 2 important informations that we could have figured out. Then this says every dealer sold at least 2 window ACs. So among all the 4 dealers, the total window ACs has to be greater than or equals to 2. D1 has sold 13 inverter ACs. What does that mean? D1 के अगर यहाँ पे A है, so this has to be 13 minus A. Then D3 sold 5 non-inverter ACs. D3 के जो non-inverter ACs हैं अगर वो 5 हैं, so I could have put this as B and this as 5 minus B. In the first look, it looks like थोड़े variables आ रहे थे. But then the next informations make things a little more simpler for us. A total of 6 window non-inverter ACs was sold. 6 in window and non-inverter. So this has to be 6 for sure. And 36 split inverter ACs. 36 split inverter ACs. That means this has to be 36. So that made my job a little more easier because if 4Y is 36, this has to be 9. So Windows ACs में there were 9 inverter and 6 non-inverter. That makes a total of 15 window ACs. If this is 15, this has to be 4 times of this. That would turn out to be 60. So sorry, this won't be 60. Yes, this would be 3x. So this would be 45. So I hope the point is very clear. We can figure out the total number of window inverter ACs were 9. Out of them, there were 6 non-inverter window ACs, 15 total of window ACs, with split ACs being 36 in inverter format. So 45 minus 36, 9 would be non-inverter format with a total of 60 ACs sold. Fine. So the first 3 information, the first 3 points were very clear now. Then this says The number of split ACs sold by D1 was twice of the number of window ACs sold by them. Again, dealer 1 के point of view से अगर मैं देख रहा हूँ तो split AC has to be twice of window AC. So I'm adding another variable. If this is C, this has to be 2C. That means it ends up selling total of 3C. Then this is D3 and D4 sold an equal number of window ACs. And this number was 1/3 of the number of ACs sold by D2. So D3 and D4 sold equal number of ACs. So if this is D, this is also D in terms of window ACs. And this was 1/3 of the similar type of ACs sold by D2. So this has to be 3D. Now, what we can figure out here is at least everything has to be 2. And we can say 5D plus C is 15. Now D has to be minimum 2, can't be 3 because if I take D as 3, that would turn out to be 15 and C would become 0. So the only probable case left out is D has to be 2. This again, that means was 2. This was 6. So the left out for C has to be 5. So we can be clear with the data again. The total number of window AC sold by dealer 1 was 5, dealer 2 was 6, then 2 and then 2. Moving forward. D2 and D3 were the only one who sold window non-inverter AC. So window non-inverter AC, D2 or D3 ही sell कर रहे हैं. So this has to be 0 indeed. If this is 0, we can understand this has to be 5 because the total ACs, window AC sold by dealer 1 was 5. If this is 0, window AC, inverter AC sold by D4 has to be 2. Now if this is 5, this is 8. So this has to be 8. 13 minus 5 has to be 8. Then this says the number of these ACs sold by D2 was twice that of ACs sold by D3. So in terms of window non-inverter AC, total 6A has to be distributed among D2 and D3 with D2 contributing twice. So 2:1 may I'll distribute 6. That means this was 4 and this was essentially 2. Now 6 minus 4, this would turn out to be 2. 2 minus 2, this would turn out to be 0. If this B is 2, this has to be 3. Perfect. Then this is D3 and D4 sold an equal number of split inverter AC. And this was half the number of similar ACs sold by D2. So if this was, let's say, E, this has to be E and this has to be 2E. D3 and D4K split inverter ACs has to be half of AC sold by D2 of the same type. So we can understand again here, we already had 8. So remaining 4E should be equals to 28. Or the split inverter AC sold by D3 and D4 has to be 7 each. And this would turn out to be 14. Fine. This sounds very clear. Fine. Now what we are left with is total मेरे पास यहाँ पे 60 है. ये मेरे पास 5 आ गया. This is 8. I missed out probably 1 point. D1 sold, D3 sold this. Okay. Okay. The number of split ACs, I missed out this point. The split AC sold by D1 was twice the number of window ACs sold by it. So beta, this has to be total of 10. If this C was 5, this was 10. So this was 15. 7 plus 3, this has to be 10. So sorry, this has to be 10. And this 10 plus 2 would be 12. Perfect. As of now, this is 2. What we are left with is these two columns. These two columns would total turns out to be 25. Still not very clear what would be the data. But yes, if I look down right now, what we cannot figure out is D2 split non-inverter AC and D4 split non-inverter AC. Rest of the data sounds very clear now. The questions were straight. The first question says, how many split inverter ACs did D2 sell? So split inverter AC sold by D2 has to be 14. So this has to be 14 was a theta question. The answer sounds very straight now. Perfect. The second question talked about what percentage of ACs sold were of non-inverter type. So non-inverter type was 6 plus 9, 15. As a percentage of total, so has to be 15 divided by 60 into 100. That would turn out to be essentially 25%. Fine. The third question asked was, what was the total number of ACs sold by D2 and D4? Now, D2 and D4 essentially would have sold 6 plus 2 inverter AC, window ACs, and 25 split ACs. So I repeat my data very clearly. There were 6 plus 2, 8 window ACs. Individual breakup nahi pata, but we are very clear the total of this has to be 25. That means the total of this, the answer would be 33. Then they asked, fourth question, which of the following statements is necessarily false? D1 and D3 together sold more ACs as compared to D2 and D4. Logically, if I look down to D1 and D3, इनका total 27 है, and पिछले क्वेश्चन में ऑलरेडी हम निकाल चुके हैं कि D2 और D4 का टोटल 33 है, तो D1 and D3 का जो टोटल है वो 27 है, they together contribute 33. So this statement is essentially false because they said it is more. Rest of the options are possible, could be, could not be, because it says D4 sold more ACs than D3. May or may not, because we were not very clear in terms of the non-inverter AC sold by them. So it could be more than 5, it could be less than 5, so data is not clear. Perfect. And the last question asked was, D3 and D4 has sold equal number of ACs. Then what was the number of non-inverter ACs sold by D2? If D3 and D4 has to sold equal number, that means this has to be 12. But this was 2, so this has to be 10, this has to be 3. This is 3. We understand total of 9. 3 plus 3, this is already 6 plus 2, so this has to be 1. So what they were asking is the number of non-inverters AC sold by D2. So that would turn out to be 4 here and 1 here. That means the total of this has to be essentially 5. So that was the first set that occurred in CAT 23 LRDI slot 3. Moving to the next set of the same. The second set was talking about certain data on a coaching class with a certain students registered for some online courses and certain registered for an offline. The total number of registration would be the sum of online and offline registrations. And the data talks about 5 months of January to May of 2023, where the table shows a number of minimum possible registrations in any month, the maximum possible online and offline and total registrations of the months, and the median. So again, if we look down to the data, we can again figure out in terms of what could be the things. Looking at the data, if I say, probably I would try to figure out the exact number of online enrollments, offline enrollments, and total enrollments in each of the 5 months. With taking into consideration that online registrations minimum has to be 40 among the 5 months. The median, that means the middle when arranged in ascending or descending order, has to be 80. And the maximum has to be 100. So out of the online registrations in 5 months, one of the figures has to be 40, one has to be 80, and one has to be 100, and the other two figures has to lie between 40 and 100, with a fundamental condition that the median has to be left as 80. The same goes for offline. One of them has to be 30. The median figure, the middle figure has to be 50, and the maximum of these has to be 80. And in terms of total, it has to be 110, median of 120, and maximum 130. That means what we can easily understand, the total has to be either 110, 120, or 130, because it says everything has to go in multiples of 10. That was the first basic information. In every month, both online and offline registrations went in number of multiples of 10. So the total also has to went in multiples of 10. The further data suggested that in January, the number of offline registrations was twice that of online. So offline has to be twice that of offline. Now, if we clearly look at this stage, we understand the total has to be a multiple of 3 as well as multiple of 10. That means the total has to be a multiple of 30. Out of 110, 120, 130, the only option left is 120. So that was critical to understand, and these are easier to understand. The total enrollments in the month of January has to be 120. That means A has to be 40. So there were 40 online registrations, 80 offline registrations, and a total of 120 registrations that occurred in the month of January. almost the same information happened for the month of April. The only thing was online was twice of that of offline. So this time again, that would turn out to be 3 ka multiple. That means this has to be this time 80, this has to be 40, and this has to be 120. So yes, we can understand. We've already tried to figure out one of the figure as 40, one of the figure as 80. We have used a 40 here. We have used a 80 here. And two 120s, one of 120 would be here. The second could be here, because if this is 110, the 120 would be here, or it could be 130 and 120 here. So this data is very clear. The third information was the number of online registration in March was same as the number of offline registrations in February. And the number of online registration was largest in May. So May has to be 100. Online registrations has to happen maximum in May. So this 100 has to be in May. What does that further suggest? Logically, the total could not exceed 130. What does that mean? The offline registration for the month of May has to be 30, and this has to be 130. So this much of data for January, April, and May was very clear. So the only information left was number of online registration in March was same as the offline in February. So this is B. This also has to be B. अब अगर हमने क्वेश्चन ध्यान से पढ़े होते तो एक जुगाड़ लग रहा था यहाँ पे, which was making the things little more easier. What can be best concluded about the offline registrations in the month of February? See, the options were only 30, 50 and 80. So थोड़ा सा अगर मैं इस पे सब्स्टिट्यूट कर लेता तो could have saved time. हमें सारी ऑप्शंस को ट्राई करने की, सारी फिजिबिलिटीज चेक करने की जरूरत नहीं थी. लॉजिकली अब देखो बेटा, जो ऑफलाइन है दैट कुड बी ओनली आइदर 50 और टिल 80. दैट मींस ऑफलाइन रजिस्ट्रेशंस जो लेफ्ट आउट हैं वो 50, 60, 70 या 80 हो सकता है. हैज टू गो इन मल्टीपल्स ऑफ 10. परफेक्ट. दैट मींस इज बी what I said in February offline or March in online, this has to be among 50, 60, 70 or 80. So offline registrations in February, इसका मतलब 50 हो सकता है, 60 और 70 तो वैसे ही ऑप्शन में नहीं था, तो ये ऑप्शन रिजेक्ट हो जाएगी. सब्स्टिट्यूट करके देख लोगे तो उससे भी रिजेक्ट हो रही है, उससे केस नहीं बन रहा है. अब मेरे पास what was left with is 50 और 80. When I'll try 80 रिजेक्ट हो रहा था. रीजन बीइंग, अगर मैं फरवरी में यहां मार्च 80 ले लेता हूं, ऊपर मुझे 110 से 130 बनाना है. अब लॉजिकली अगर मैं यहां पे 80 ले लेता तो ऊपर लॉजिकली मुझे यहां पे भी 80 आ जाता. अब एक 50 होना जरूरी था. दिस वुड हैव मेड 130. दैट मींस दिस हैज टू बी 110 बिकॉज़ आई हैव नॉट यूज्ड 110 टिल नाउ. व्हाट डज दैट मींस? फरवरी में जो ऑनलाइन रजिस्ट्रेशन है वो 30 हो जाती, which was not possible because minimum possible registrations online में 30 नहीं थी, 40 थी. Fine. So 80 as an option of offline registration in February would negate the case. I repeat, the negation is on the basis of the total registrations has to be 110 on one of the 5 months. वो possible नहीं हो पा रहा था. So उसके हिसाब से अगर चलते तो this would have been essentially 50. This would also had to be 50. So I've used this 50 again and I'll substitute 50 here. That means this value now has to be between 80, 90 or 100 to maintain a median of 80. So this would have 3 options, either 80, 90 or 100. But the total could not cross 130. That means this 90 and 100 would also be negated. So this has to be 130. So this is 80 and 50. That makes total of 130. Fine. Then with this 50, I have to have another 110. If I have to maintain 110, this has to be 60. So that was a feasible case that I could figure out. एक मुझे क्या रखना था? 110. ये 50 हो गया. This is also 50. Fine. So this would be the case. Perfect. Eh? Now we can answer the question that would follow. What was the total number of registrations in April So total number of registrations in April has to be 120. Total number of online registrations in January, has to be 40. Which of the following statements can be true? The number of offline registration was smallest in May. The number of offline registrations in May has to be smallest. Yes, it can be true. The total number of registrations was smallest in February. The smallest possible registrations in February, not possible. Na? See, the total number of registrations was smallest in February. No, the smallest possible. So sorry. The total number of registrations was smallest has to be in March. So this was something that was not true. So what could be true is only one. What can be best concluded for the offline registration in February? We figured out this was 50. Which pair of months definitely had the same total number of registrations? So same total number of registrations, both January and April, as well as February and May. So January and April has same registration, February and May also have same registrations. So I'll go by both 1 and 2. Fine, so that was set 2. Probably the easier set in the paper. Moving to set 3, a network-based problem, a route-based problem, where they were asking us, there was 4 teams that has to patrol, that has to move to certain streets. The streets were given in the format of a network, in the format of there was certain road that was connecting A to B and then B to A. Then a road was connecting A to F, then F to E, A to E, and certain options were given. The important point of the information was each of the team was stationary at 9 o'clock at station A and had to make sure that they come back to station A at 12 again. Each team would cover the street in 30 minutes and they can also pass by a station at any point on their journey. So again, we'll have to figure out, probably what we need to figure out is the relative position of each of the team at each of the points starting ranging from 9 to 9:30, then from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, then from 10 to 10:30. So if I'll have to go through this chart, probably I'll try to figure out the relative positions of each of the teams at these different point of times, with the condition that they have to move along the routes in any direction. And it was also important that none of the street can move through one team traveling along the same direction at any point. Fine. So one of the route can have only one of the teams at any point of time. So from 9 to 9:30, let's say if one of the team is traveling from A to B, the other has to travel from A to F. Now, to begin with, let's figure out certain very basic things. Each of the team was at station A at the initially and has to finally also end up at station A. A say we had probably 4 routes available. So, itna to we are sure that from 9 to 9:30, all these 4 routes would be occupied. One of the team would go from A to B, the another has to go from A to C, another has to go from A, another has to go from A to E. Fine. And then there were certain critical informations given. Team 2 and Team 3 are the only ones at E and D respectively at 10 o'clock. So Team 2 was at E and Team 3 was at D, and they were the only ones. That means none of the other teams could be at these stations at this point. Then they says Team 1 and Team 3 are the only ones at station E at 10:30. So at 10:30, this team was at E and Team 3 was also at E. Again, the only teams here, that means none of the other teams could be at station E at this time. Team 1 and 4 respectively were at B and E. So Team 1 should be at B and Team 4 should be at E at 11:30. Team 1 and Team 4 are the only teams that could patrol A to E. So we are very clear that this station could be accessed only with either Team 1 or Team 4. The rest of the teams could not travel from A to E. So I'm very clear, A to E, I cannot have Team 2 I cannot have team 3 from A to E. So the option of traveling here is violated. And then team 4 cannot pass through BDF. Now, if they cannot pass through BDF, what is left with only A, E, and C for team 4? So team 4, we had only options of traveling from either A to E or E to A or A to C and C to E. The other options are violated in this case. So it can travel either on AE route or on travel on AC route. So we'll start simply with this. Let's try to figure out if I'll have to finally travel from A to E. I have only one option. In 2-hour slot, I have to travel, in 2 slots of half an hour each. If I have to travel to E, the only possible route is A to F and F to E. There's no other possibility of traveling in taking 2 roads and reach down to E. So the only possible case here is A to F and then F to E. The same with D. D के लिए we had 2 options. D को पहुंचने के लिए we can either go through ACD or AED. But team C तो AE पे आ ही नहीं सकती. So it has to travel from A to C and then to D. Up when we look on to team 4 has to take either AE or AC. AC is already used for team 3. So what is left is only AE. That means team 1 has to go through B. Fine. All the teams were stationed at A initially. The 4 possible routes we have taken from 9 to 9:30. Team 1 would travel from A to B and team 2 A to F, A to E, C and A to E respectively. Now, team 1 has to reach from B to E after traveling 2 routes. So again, the only possible case is it will travel back to A and then will go to E. Now, if it has to reach from E to B again with only one stop in between, the only possible case is again traveling from A and then to B. So we are very clear team A ka route plan. Then let's look to team 2 ka route plan. Sorry, team 3 से पहले start करते हैं because the options left are little more limited. A to C to D to E. Now traveling to 2 more stations, it has to reach A. So E से A आना है with 2 stations in between. If it properly travel on E to F, it will reach there in 1 station. So to reach A, the only possible case after taking exactly 2 stations in between, it could be either it will go back to A, but E to A is no more a possibility. So EA की possibility is already removed. वैसे भी team 3 could not travel on E to A. So the only possible case is it will travel to D and then will travel to C and then will reach back to A. Fine. What was left with is team 4. Team 4 has to travel between A, E. So वापस ही आना पड़ेगा because उसके पास 2 ही routes हैं E से EA. अब A से E जा नहीं सकता because 10 to 10:30 A is already used. So it has to travel to C. So again has to come back to A, would again go back to E and would again go back to A. Team 2, A is already used here, cannot travel on EA. So E से he had 2 options, either to go to F or to go to D. अब AE तो वो possible वैसे भी नहीं था, sorry team 2 का. So E को कहाँ जा सकता है? E या तो F पे जाएगा, F से it will travel to A, then will go somewhere. But the problem was either E possible नहीं है, either B और E possible नहीं है. So यहाँ पे the only possible case is F. जैसे जाते समय all the 4 routes has to be used, to reach back again all the 4 routes has to be used because the same route could not be repeated. अब taking 2 intermediary routes, it has to reach F. Cannot travel on A. So what it'll do? It'll go on F. E पे था. E से अगर बच्चे वो यहाँ पे जाए तो E से D पे जा नहीं सकता because this route is already used. A पे वो travel कर नहीं सकता तो will go to F. F से again will go to A, again to F, again to A. Fine. So this would be the final route plan that has to be followed by all the 4 teams. Now the question that followed were a little more simpler. Which among the following is visited the largest number of times? See, if we'll count, C was visited for almost 3 times, rather exactly 3 times. E was visited for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. D was visited for 1 and 2 times. And F was visited for 1, 2, 3 times. So the maximum number of times that the team was visited was essentially E. The second question asks, how many teams do the teams pass through station B in a day? How many times do the teams pass through station B? Station B was assessed only by team A, and the correct answer that would be 2. Which teams was patrolling at 10:15 between D and E? So 10:15 is obviously this time. So D and E के बीच में it was team 3. How many times does the team 4 passes to station E? Team 4 passes to station E for twice. And how many teams pass through station C in a day? Station C in a day? Station C in a day has to be once, 2, and 3. So how many teams, how many teams are, how many times nahi hai. So how many teams? There were only 2 teams, team 3 and team 4. So there were only 2 teams that passed through station C in this. Perfect. So moving to the next set, that was set number 4. Probably the toughest of all sets, was not very tough, but yes, people found it little tougher than the other 4 sets. The set was talking about 6 students who took certain kind of a test. There were 3 female students among them, that were Amla, Kohli and Rini, and there were 3 male students, that were Bimal, Matthew and Shamal. The course has 2 evaluation components, a project and a test. The aggregate score has to be a weighted average of 2 components. That means certain weight has to be attached to the score of project. Another certain weight has to be attached to the score of test, with the total weight being positive and the total weight adding to 1. That means the 2 of them has to be given a certain weightage to assess the final score. The first important information was the projects has to be done in groups of 2, with each group consisting of a male and a female student. And both the groups member had the same score in the project. So that was important to understand. In terms of project, I have to have 3 groups, with each of the 3 groups forming a male and a female, with each of them scoring equal when they belong to the same group. So in a way, there would be 2 scores same, there will be 2 identical scores, and there will be 2 another identical score. The first and the foremost information was the minimum, maximum and average of both the project and the test score was identical, that is 40, 80 and 60. So logically, if I look down to the information on project first, there has to be, that means 140. Now, there were a male and a female has to score 40 each. The maximum has to be 80. Again, the male and the female has to score identical in project. The group has to score identical. That means there has to be a male scoring 80 and a female scoring 80 also. Now, what was critical? If I'll have to maintain an average of 60, what does that mean? The median score or the other score available in the project again has to be 60. So that was a little more critical to understand in this case. 40 and 80 already turns out to be an average of 60, or we would have worked for total. We can assume this to be X and X. And I would have said total has to be 240, 60, the total, 360, with 2 of them scoring 40, 2 of them scoring 80, another 2 scoring X each, turns out to be total of 360. So I would have said 80 plus 160, 240. So X would again turn out to be 60. So that was critical to begin with. In project, the available scores has to be 2 of them scoring 40, 2 of them scoring 60, and 2 of them scoring 80. The test also had something like that. An average of minimum of 40, an average of 60, with the maximum of 80. That means a total of 3 people has to be 360. Then they say the test scores was again in multiples of 10. With 4 of them were distinct and the remaining two were equal to the average test scores. That means another two was definitely 60 each. And the leftover x and y has to be distinct from 40, 60 and 80. So let's be a little more critical. Everything has to go in multiples of 10. 4 of them has to be kept distinct. The remaining two has to be kept equal to average score. So that means 60 and 60 each. Again, if I look down to the total, this would be 100, 160, 240. X plus y would turn out to be 120. Now, logically understand, none of them could be 40, 60 or 80 and has to go in multiples of 10 with minimum more than 40. So the only option left is 50 and 70. So this was critical to understand the terms of project. It has to be 240, 260, 280. And terms of the scoring pattern in the test, it has to be a person scoring 40, another scoring 50, two of them scoring 60, then a 70 and then a 80. Then there was certain distribution on what Amla scored, Kohli score and so on. So let's try to figure out. In terms of project, we are very clear one of them has to be 40, a 50, two 60s, a 70 and a 80. This was regarding project. Test, I had to have two 40s, two 60s and two 80s. So my allocation has to go in this format. Fine. So these 2 points are very clear. Moving to the next point. Amla score in project was double that of Kohli in the same. अब बेटे double का तो एक ही option है 40 और 80. So Amla score in project was 80 and Kohli has to be 40. So I'm eliminating 40 and 80 from here. This is already what I allocated. And Kohli scored 20 more than Amla in the test. कोहली का जो टेस्ट में स्कोर है वो 20 ज्यादा है. अब 20 की मेरे पास दो ऑप्शन दिख रही थी. One is if Kohli has to score 20 more than Amla, either it would be 40 and this would be 60, or this would be 60 and this would be 80. That is in terms of test. But then this says, yet Amla had the highest aggregate score. अमला का जो एग्रीगेट स्कोर है वो बाकियों से ज्यादा होना चाहिए, तो इसका मैक्सिमम है. फाइन. Shamil scored the second highest score and he scored 2 more than Kohli but 2 less than Amla. What does that mean? अगर Amla का स्कोर A है, so जो Kohli है, so sorry, let it be this way. Shamil scored second highest and he scored 2 more than Kohli, so let Kohli be A and Shamil would be A plus 2 and this would be A plus 4. Then this says Biman scored the second lowest in the test. Second lowest in the test has to be 60. So Biman का जो यहाँ पे स्कोर है, so sorry, मैंने I think कुछ उल्टा लिख दिया है. एक सेकंड. Sorry, project was 40, 40, 60, 60. I messed up it. So sorry. So I'll have to correct it out. This was practically test. And let this be project. So sorry for that. Fine. I messed up the stuff. Ulta ho gaya sara. So I'll have to delete and probably recreate the scene. एक सेकेंड. So sorry for that. अच्छा चलो. So let it be this way then. Shamal scored. Kamal scores in project was double that of Kohli. Fine. So project score was identical 40, 60 and 80. So this was project. यहाँ से I am removing this case. So Amla score in project was double that of Kohli in the same. So यहाँ पे अगर 80 है, so this has to be 60. Let's remove all this. Fine. Then this says, but Kohli scored, Amla score in the project was double that of Kohli in the same, but Kohli scored 20 more than Amla in the test. So Kohli का जो टेस्ट का स्कोर है वो इससे 20 ज्यादा है. So let it be this way. Fine. Again, this is double, so this has to be 40. Shamal scored the second highest in the test. Second highest in the test was definitely 70. So Shamal का जो score है वो यहाँ पे 70 होगा. He scored 2 more than Kohli but 2 less than Amla in aggregate. तो Shamal का जो score है वो 2 more than Kohli है. Perfect है. But 2 less than Shamal. So I've already taken that as A plus 2 and A plus 4. Biman scored the second lowest in the test. Second lowest in the test has to be 50. So Biman का score यहाँ पे 50 होना चाहिए. And lowest in aggregate, so यहाँ पे इसका जो score है वो lowest होगा, minimum होगा. Matthew scored more than Rini in project. Matthew has to score more than Rini in project. So project Matthew has to be more than Rini, but less than her in test. So यहाँ पे जो Rini का score है वो Matthew से ज़्यादा है. Now project में we understand मुझे combinations of 2 में जाना था. Logically अगर मैं देखूं तो मेरे पास जो allocation बची हुई है, अब दो की grouping करनी है. एक तो clear हो गया, रिनी का यहाँ 60 ही होना चाहिए because there were 3 girls with 3 different scores and then there would be 3 boys making groups out of them. मैथ्यू अगर रिनी से ज्यादा है तो मैथ्यू पक्का 80 पे होगी. मैथ्यू पक्का 80 पे होगा एज अ बॉय. सो जो ग्रुप था वो अमला और मैथ्यू का था, बोथ स्कोरिंग 80. परफेक्ट है. अब लॉजिकली अगर मैं देखूं तो अगर मुझे अमला को हाईएस्ट बनाना है, अमला एज हाईएस्ट, दैट मींस अगर यहाँ पे 80 है और यहाँ पे भी 80 है, सो आइडियली अमला यहाँ पे क्या हो सकती है? 50 70 60 80 का कॉम्बिनेशन तो वैसे सॉरी एलिमिनेट हो चुका है. नहीं, 40 80 अभी बचा हुआ था यहाँ पे, सो सॉरी. सो 50 70 का ऑप्शन नहीं है, यहाँ 40 60 होगा या 60 80 होगा. अगर अमला यहाँ 40 स्कोर कर लेती तो मैथ्यू भी 40 तो स्कोर नहीं करेगा, मैथ्यू से ज्यादा स्कोर करेगा. दैट मींस मैथ्यू अमला से ज्यादा हो जाता. सो अगर मुझे अमला को हाईएस्ट रखना है, सो दैट मींस इसके पास 40 का ऑप्शन नहीं है. 50 is already eliminated, we've already allocated. So the only option left with here has to be 60 and this has to be 80. So one of the 60 is gone, one of the 80 is gone. What is left is 40 and 60 as an option. उसमें रिनी का अगर मैथ्यू से ज्यादा है, so obviously रिनी would be scoring 60 and मैथ्यू would be scoring 40. Perfect. अब अगर मुझे ग्रुपिंग करनी है तो मुझे पता है कि ग्रुपिंग में मैथ्यू और अमला ऑलरेडी आ चुके हैं. अब लॉजिकली मेरे पास जो दो ऑप्शन बची थी, यहाँ 60 और 40 में से एक बची थी. अब अगर मैं ध्यान से देखूं तो मुझे इसको लोएस्ट बनाना है. अगर ये लोएस्ट बनाना चाहता हूं तो मुझे लोएस्ट बनाने के लिए इसको 40 या 60 में से एक देना और इसको 60 या 40 में से एक देना है, विद द कंडीशन कि अगर मैं यहाँ पे 60 दे देता हूं तो मुझे थोड़ा सा वेट्स को पहले शायद चेक करना पड़ेगा. अब 50 और 60 है और 70 और 40 है, सो मुझे वेट्स के अकॉर्डिंगली दिस इज 60 एंड 80, ये इससे 4 ज्यादा होना चाहिए. तो एक तरह से अगर मैं देखूं तो 60 को अगर मैं x का वेट दे रहा हूं, सॉरी टेस्ट को अगर मैं x का वेट दे रहा हूं और प्रोजेक्ट को y वेट दे रहा हूं, तो ये a+4 है. और यहाँ पे इसको अगर मैं 80 का वेट दे रहा हूं और इसको 40 का वेट दे रहा हूं तो ये a है. सो टेकिंग डिफरेंस ऑफ दीज टू, आई कुड से 40y minus 20x should be equals to 4 और 10y minus 5x should be equals to 1. अगर हम थोड़ा सा क्वेश्चंस को ध्यान से पढ़ते तो वेट्स के कंपोनेंट में, वो टेस्ट का कंपोनेंट के वेट की 4 ऑप्शन है. टेस्ट को हमने यहाँ पे x बोला हुआ है, ठीक है. उसके कंपोनेंट को मैंने क्या ऑप्शन दे सकता हूँ? 0.6. अगर मैं x को 0.6 दे देता हूं तो यहाँ पे ऑब्वियसली 0.4 होगा. Does it satisfy the option? Yes, 4 minus 3 is 1. तो ये एज अ फिजिबल ऑप्शन आ गई. x could be 0.6. बाकी ऑप्शन नेगेट हो जाएंगी. 0.5 डालूंगा तो बेटे वो 10 into 0.5 would be 5 minus 2.5 1 नहीं आएगा. 0.4 अगर दे देता हूं, उल्टा दे देता हूं तो बेटे 10 into 0.6 minus 5 into 0.4 would turn out to be something else. So the only possible option is 0.6. इससे क्लियर हो रहा है जो वेटेज है वो कितनी है 0.6 की. So we can understand कि अगर मैं 0.6 के साथ आंसर बनाऊं तो would be able to do that. So what was Rinne's score in the project? Rinne's score in the project has to be 60. Weight of the test component is 0.6. Maximum aggregate score obtained by the student. Maximum obviously अमला का था तो उसका स्कोर है कितना? जो मेरे पास टेस्ट है उसकी वेटेज जो है वो 0.6 की है और प्रोजेक्ट की जो वेटेज है वो 0.4 की है. So aggregate score has to be 68. Matthew's score in the test has to be 40. Which of the following pair of students were part of the same project? Amla and Bimal? No. Amla was paired up with Matthew, so Amla and Bimal is not a possible option. Kohli and Matthew, again not possible because Matthew was attached with Amla. So I would say neither 1 not 2 is the valid case. So that was all the 4 sets that occurred in CAT slot 3 of CAT 2023. Thanks. That was all about the day. Thank you so much.